Hey everyone, welcome to the TAF22 Hackathon Best Practices. I'm joined today with our hackathon winners. We have John Henderson from Enertel. John, do you want to say hi?
Hey, how's it going?
Hey John, and then we have Lee Grant. So I'm going to bring Lee onto the screen. Hey Lee, how are you doing today?
Good, thanks.
Great, great. We have John Orth connecting. He is our fourth place winner, so he might be joining us in a little bit. But we thought we'd go ahead and get started, not keep the audience waiting, and we talk a little bit about the hackathon and the hackathon best practices coming from our hackathon winners. Just a little overview of the hackathon. I thought I'd start with showing how the hackathon was oriented and how the questions were. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. Screen one. Oops. Yep. So there we go. So this is the hackathon challenge. So this was focused on water usage in the United States and using thermoelectric power plants and how much water those were using. We had recirculating recirculating water cooling systems. We had once through water cooling systems. We had different drought characteristics we were looking at. And the exercises were kind of oriented where the first exercise was really just on setting up a descriptive dashboard that was looking at the types of power units that are in the United States. So it challenged the hackathon participants to look at the energy transition and energy distribution. You can see hydro, for instance, a lot of hydro in the southeast, as well as the west coast and the northeast over here. We're seeing solar and wind. Solar is throughout the United States, wind a lot through the Great Plains. And we're able to see also a transition over time where solar and wind has been becoming a predominant use of new power plants, new energy sources in the recent years for new plants. But we also have natural gas that's been very popular throughout the last century, and coal, which was popular in the beginning of the last century, but then kind of became phased out in the 60s and 70s. And as we went to more natural gas, solar and wind. So the first exercise was just visualizing power plants around the United States. And then the second exercise was on visualizing the cooling technology. So you had complex, which is a combination of once through and recirculating water cooling. And once through is water that goes through the power plant for cooling, but is not then reused. It gets returned to its source. Recirculating is water. I keep saying power. Is water that goes through to the power plant, but then may be reused in a recirculating tower, recirculating pond. And complex is a combination of those two. And we see that recirculating towers are very common in the United States. They comprise about 62% of all the power plants. They use recirculating towers. Once through freshwater is used a lot in some of the older plants, especially towards the East Coast and east of the Continental Divide. You're seeing a lot of once through. Really interesting that the top water sources used is Mississippi River, Lake Michigan, and Missouri River. Those were the top water sources used for cooling. Across all cooling types, it's still those top three, and they're all used for once through fresh water. So once through uses quite a bit of water, as you can imagine, because it's not reusing that water and recirculating that water. So that is, it doesn't have as much losses in terms of recirculating has more evaporation that's lost overall. So it actually consumes more, but the use is actually the water that is entering into the plant and being used by the plant. And so the once through is a very high water usage since it has to continuously feed those water cooling systems. Next was a little bit of drought history. So the drought history, we pulled data for the past 10 years and monthly data, and we challenged the hackathon participants to show some sort of time series of how some sort of time evolution of how the drought has changed over the past 10 years, month by month. And we wanted them to show what the overall trend was. So in here, I have a chart, a line chart that has this trend that shows with the more extreme and exceptional drought, that is actually increasing over the past 10 years. Abnormal moderate droughts are decreasing. So we're seeing this overall drought is actually increasing and it's becoming more extreme. The more extreme parts are increasing, but the abnormal parts and the moderate parts are not as severe. Those are not as increasing as much. But in the past 3 years, we've seen a significant increase in drought in the United States. And a lot of this is in the Southwest. So the next challenge was, how do you bring this all together? You have different drought levels. Let me just go back here to the drought history and bring this. Yeah. You have different drought levels. You have different cooling types. You have different plants. And you need to bring all of this together. Looks like my data function is not working right now, but what this would show is the least efficient least water efficient plants. So which plants are using the most water per energy generated can be shown on this map. And then you can actually like filter through what type of cooling type, what type of drought level, what type of fuel source is used. And so we saw a lot of creative uses of bringing the data together. The trick here was that this one required you to actually do a points and polygons a data function, which would bring in the power plants into the latest water the latest drought regions. And so you can find what plants were within which different drought regions. And it looks like I need to refresh this, but I'm not going to refresh this now because it's going to take, I mean, I'll set it to refresh, but it'll probably take a minute to run. So we won't get all those results right now, but we'll see the results when we look at the solution. Oh, there we go. It finished pretty quickly. Okay. So never mind that. So here is the actual solution. So we can actually see the plants that are in exceptional drought, the plants that are in extreme drought, the plants that are in severe drought. And we can see what type of plants those are. Are they natural gas? Are they nuclear? Are they coal? And what type of water used or what type of cooling technology is used for the water usage in the actual power plant. So let me bring, looks like Michael just joined us. Let me bring Michael into the stream. Michael, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. Couldn't find the link. How are we doing? Where are we at?
Yeah, I'm just going over the solutions and we're coming up on the last exercise. And then I was going to hand it over to Lee to show us his solutions and how he came through this. So just wrapping up here and showing off the last of the results and the solutions of the hackathon. So this exercise was on looking at water usage, water consumption factors across all technologies. There's not a lot of water consumption data for renewables like solar and wind, which use almost no, solar voltaic and wind use almost no water at all. And so there's a little bit of data that we put into a summary table, and we asked the participants to then visualize how renewables are, how much water they use by their cooling technologies. And it's interesting because concentrated solar power actually uses the most water here, and hydro, which is excluded from this data set, hydro actually uses even more than that. Obviously, hydro is very water intensive, using water as the prime mover through the turbines. But you're able to compare here with nuclear, natural gas, and coal, and see that solar voltaic and wind are much lower. Natural gas is much lower than nuclear and coal, and so on and so forth, and get a comparison that way. So that's the overall hackathon. The whole overall hackathon challenge. We gave everyone, what was it, 6 hours, I believe, to complete the hackathon. And we had some great submissions, and we are really excited to have Lee and John on. John Orth and Ryan Hartquist are maybe still connecting. They might join us later. But with that, let me go ahead and hand it over to Lee. Lee, did you want to share your screen and talk a little bit about the hackathon and the challenges?
Sure.
Let me turn my... I'll bring your screen on here.
I think you can see that okay, hey?
We can, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'll start by saying, I guess, I'm not a power gen, not a water expert by any means. I work in the energy industry, so I'm pretty comfortable working with those data sets, a little less so here. So I maybe won't try to speak so much on like necessarily the results and kind of interpretations, but maybe stick more on kind of how the approaches I took and some of that kind of thing. If that works for you guys.
Yeah, that works great. Yeah.
Great. So I guess one thing that I think was a little bit unique about my submission, and you'll kind of see it on the different tabs here, is most if not all of them kind of have this left side panel where I've kind of contained all of the relevant filters or document properties, anything that's kind of intended to be interacted with. And then another thing I tried to do kind of as a means of helping communicate my steps and my workflow as I went through the data is I included this kind of summary section, which basically broke down for every one of the exercises and then kind of the sub questions that have been identified in the hackathon, I guess, description that we were referencing. Is I tried to kind of line out how I went through the interpretation and what visuals I kind of used for each of them. So it's a little bit unique, right? You're kind of being judged fully kind of behind the scenes without really an ability to kind of interact with the judges. So I thought that might be a useful way of kind of trying to communicate my workflow. Some of the other methods, I guess, is I, in some cases, used the visual kind of description box to lay out either some relevant kind of assumptions or maybe some clues on how to interact with the visuals themselves. So you'll see that in a few places as well. Otherwise, I don't know. I tried to include these kind of scrolling pages as well, particularly where there was quite a bit of content to deliver on one page. So I guess as a way to kind of contain all of the content for one exercise kind of in one place, I elected to do that, which was a little bit of a gamble because I actually don't usually do that day to day. So I kind of had to make sure I could do that within the allotted time and have it kind of work and look okay. So yeah, I guess here, I kind of had this Sunburst chart to kind of navigate through the hierarchy. Also took some time to basically collapse the individual types into kind of their overarching categories, which I think kind of helps. So it helps you kind of drill into some of that transitionary comments that Neil was making about, movement towards renewable and that kind of thing. And then here I just had some, showing like top 20 states kind of on a total basis, and then the split between renewable and hydrocarbons. Moving through
that we definitely like that you split it into renewable and hydrocarbons to give a good comparison there at kind of categorize those variables, those groups of energy types together. And we also really like the scrolling page that you use to really not have too much packed into one view. You could actually scroll and have an easy view of what was happening and a good narrative between that.
For sure. Yeah. Like I didn't want to split it up between tabs, like kind of within one exercise, because then you're kind of putting a little more onus maybe on the the judge or the user to kind of know and have an appreciation for the workflow that you intended. So having it on one page debatably makes that a little bit easier. Yeah, on this one, I guess I included like a use of a tree map, kind of is a nice way to show both relative size and also give some drill down capability. This and the Sunburst kind of work interactively together quite nicely. And then this bottommost one was kind of intended to be a drill down where you could get a sense for the key sources. Again, that's the Mississippi River showing up, similar to what Neil said. Move kind of through this one. Again, pretty similar in a lot of ways, kind of making it easy to scroll through the timestamps on the map and get a sense for the evolution. I saw some other contestants had some really nice visuals on this one too. I was jealous of and wish that I'd included, but all good. I'm sure they'll show them.
We like the use of the display value mod that you have at the bottom there. Just to quickly show the total area, and then you had highlighted the exceptional area, the area that was under exceptional drought.
Right. Yeah, and I was going to make the comment. I did try to include a few mods throughout, just to kind of highlight that functionality. Yeah, I'll admit I'm still kind of like relatively new to mods and still trying to figure out where best to make use of the different ones available to us. But yeah, tried to throw in a few. Moving through, we'll see if I got anything on this one. Again, pretty simple here. This one maybe like there's a little more content kind of included in the filters. So the description of the exercise, it kind of requested certain filtering and navigation kind of be available. So I kind of have a number of different categories. Again, I like kind of grouping them in these I guess categories that kind of logically place the similar filters together. So that's kind of how I went through that. Lastly,
is that navigation that you've got there, the concertina in the text area, is that something you carry around, Lee, from using a lot of your analyses?
Yeah, exactly. Like it's something that internally at Birchcliff where I work, it kind of shows up over and over in a lot of our projects. So we kind of package it up like that, such that users at our company kind of have some familiarity. So regardless of what workbook or project they kind of jump into, they get a bit of sense of that brand consistency, navigation consistency. So they're not having to kind of reinterpret every project that's maybe new to them. So definitely something we kind of tend to reutilize for sure.
Yeah. No, it's convenient for the developer, but also, like you say, if people know what they're consuming and how they can navigate without having to, figure it out, that's huge.
Yeah. I don't know. People always are kind of like, there's a potential to be kind of intimidated going into one, but I always like say people they don't need to be taught how to use a website, for example. So in my opinion, a well set up project, should guide the person through it in a way that even seeing it for the first time, they can make some sense of it, even if they're not a expert analyst. I don't know if I got too much really to say on this one. It's actually interesting, very similar to Neil's. That's coincidence, but
we noted that it's very similar to Neil. So when we were doing the judging, we were like, oh wow, that's like
yeah. I think I had intent to maybe like try to make this one a little flashier, but I just never got around to it again as I was kind of going through my last stages of cleaning tabs up. But yeah, I think that's kind of it, unless there's any specific things you want me to kind of drill into.
Yeah, no, I think this exercise, this last one, was a very simple data set. So it wasn't as granular as some of the power plant data. It wasn't as granular as some of the water cooling data. But the purpose of it was to show a comparison of where are we seeing the most water usage across different types, including renewables, and where can we become more sustainable in terms of water usage. And I think one of the overall takeaways that I found from creating this hackathon was The United States is doing very well with having recirculating towers in terms of water cooling. So that's something we don't see around every other country in the world. It's something that has transitioned over the past few decades. And then with some of the transitions to renewables that aren't using water cooling at all, like solar voltaic and wind, we're using even less water. So I think in the research I read that over the past 10 years, we're actually using 10% less water per year than we were using 10 years ago. So even though our power demands are increasing, we are doing better in terms of how we use the natural resources around us. And so that's some interesting, really interesting and really promising to know.
Right on. Yeah, no, I was personally okay with exercise 5 being a simpler one, because after 4, I was pretty worried that 5 was going to kick my ass coming down the stretch.
4 was the big one, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting to see like the complexity of 4 on the data canvas is kind of spelled out pretty neatly, right? Where the first ones are pretty simple, maybe some calculated columns or tags and that kind of thing, and then 4 took a little bit more thought, I guess, to have it come together. So
Yeah,
it was good on it. Good on you guys for setting it up.
one thing just to comment, I'm a bit of a stickler on the data science team for including units on axis labels. So
Yeah.
I wanted to point that out. You could have put some units on the x-axis there.
No, I'm sure I'm thinking now, I'm like, did I do that? In some cases I did, some I
He
didn't.
does have units in his titles, though.
Inconsistent, maybe.
Yeah. But yeah, I do like the use of units in your title there on this page. That's great.
Yeah, I was going to ask, did you guys purposely mess up some of the units and see if it would catch us?
Yes, you were the only participant to actually go through and convert all the units into megawatts. I think there were some units were in barrels and megawatt hours, and you convert them all to megawatts. Yeah.
Now, guaranteed, I don't think I did these right, but I at least tried, and that was kind of my philosophy.
Yeah, no, for sure. I was funny. I'm digging you on that last one, but I do remember now that you were the most scientific in terms of consistency on units in general. Just didn't display them on that final exercise, but yeah, I'm a bit of a stickler for that, as Neil knows, on our team. But either in the title or on the axis, it's always good to
see
the units. Yeah.
Now, in terms of the sidebar, which we really like that sidebar, that orient, we talked about that, how it orients the viewer and the audience. Do you have like just reusable code that you just plug in and use on all your dashboards? Is that kind of a common go-to for you?
Yeah, basically it's we just kind of have like a canned some canned HTML and CSS, and kind of drop that in there, and then it's pretty simple after that, once you've worked with them a handful of times, to quickly roll those out. And I think it's like a good compromise between not spending an incredible amount of time with like really custom HTML development stuff versus like still having a nice kind of clear and well thought out workflow.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And also noticed the really good use of Sunburst Charts. We like.
Yeah, for the drill down, that was awesome. Using any Spotfire visual that has like chunks of area to it is a candidate for navigation, right? But I like the way you rolled it up on that inner circle.
Yeah, no, I like them. I'm starting to try to use them a bit more. Kind of like the the navigation and kind of the information shows up on the center too on hover. I think it's pretty slick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you did the energy transition with the bar chart there, exactly like how I had done it. So it was almost like you were reading my mind when you said that.
I feel like we're big fans of Ben Schneiderman, obviously, but I just often go back to his mantra of overview first, the zoom and filter to the area of interest, details on demand, those 3 levels.
Right.
And I feel like you achieved that in a lot of your visuals. So it was really easy for me to understand what was going on, because you had that overview, click to the area for navigation, and then you get the details. And yeah, I think, at least for my simple mind, I like thinking in threes. It's like you can always kind of imagine a 3-step process, but after that, it gets a little bit too many combination permutations. But I like the way you kind of just had a simple 3-step flow through the data.
Right.
Yeah, and good annotations on, status equals operational. You have in all your descriptions there. So, we wanted people to filter down to the operational power plants. For those of you that are watching and didn't participate in the hackathon, this had power plants that were mothballed and shuttered and planned, and all kinds of power. And there were power units too. They weren't even just power plants. There were power units that needed to be aggregated into power plants. So it required some filtering, and it's good that you annotated that into your dashboard itself.
Can you slide down on this one a little bit while we've got it on the screen, just to remind me of what's down the bottom there? Yeah, okay, gotcha. Yeah, it's a nice sequence of drill down the page too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Lee, and congratulations on your second place award, and thanks for sharing your practices that you employed when doing this hackathon. We hope to have you continue with us and do our hackathon next year as well. With that, I think we'll turn over to John. John, you have your dashboard ready? I can bring yours up. If it's not, I can pull it up on my side as well.
Yeah, John, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, let me pull it up now.
We might want to consider, rolling out the best practices for all the hackathon winners and kind of having a best practice site. Maybe Jose could work on that, Neil.
Yeah.
So some things that are really aligned with what we think of as best practices from these winning entries.
There we go.
I'll add that to the stream. John, when we saw yours, we were just really wowed, right off the bat you have obviously very beautiful color themes. You have a lot of careful attention to the fonts. You had a good presentation of charts here. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how you chose certain charts and how you designed this?
Yeah, I'll start out with the design. So first of all, I kind of picked just like a dark theme and then a color scheme to go with it that I think complemented the dark background fairly well. I think Lee mentioned this on how, having like HTML available to be able to reuse. So actually we're just going through and using a pre-built CSS style sheet that I'm appending to the head. So all the customization on the visuals were, kind of already pre-built. So I just loaded in the CSS sheet and then brought that in. And so that, immediately kind of transforms the look of the dashboard without having to do a lot of manual effort. And then so for this first, challenge, this exercise 1, I think the goal was to show, overall, where are the location of the plants, what's the breakdown by year, any kind of changes in trends versus, renewable versus non-renewable. So I think likely I also created some calculated columns to change, between thermoelectric, but also, just general fuel types. So I can, dive into wind and look at where the location of all the wind farms are. Same thing with solar. And then we have a generational status. So I can see, what's been mothballed, to look at trends on overall, plant closures. So if something's been, shuttered, like you see, a lot of nuclear plants throughout the U.S. have been shuttered in recent years. You can kind of see, total capacity that we've now just shut down. So, similar to everything else, just looking at drill downs and certain things kind of pop up based on what you select. One of the different things I think I chose in terms of methodology was we wanted to look at trends through time. So I'm using I'm actually probably abusing this. So I'm using a Kanban board to filter down to a specific year. And the reason I did this is because the Kanban board only allows one year selection at a time. And I just noticed going through the data that there's very disparate differences year over year. You know, if you look at like Carter years versus Reagan years in terms of which plants came online, which plants were shut down. So I thought it'd be interesting to just kind of look at things on a year by year basis. So that way you couldn't blend multiple years together and get kind of a confused picture. So that's why I went with, with the Kanban board, and then looking at incremental capacity by fuel source, similar to, cumulative bar chart, and then looking at a stacked area chart as well, just so you can see the proportion. And then one thing with the map, I created another calculated column to figure out which states were in, continental US, because you can see there's a lot of data points that fall outside of, the lower 48. So just being able to view those a little bit easier. I just created that as a calculated column. And then again, we have some filtering so I can quickly dive into, generation type.
Yeah,
and then this doc. Go ahead.
I think sometimes with the Mercator projection, Canada shows up to be like twice as big as the US, and being able to quickly jump back to the lower 48, I think gives good perspective.
Yeah, definitely. And then document properties that control how many years you can see here. So if I bump this up to 50, that increases everything pretty extensively. So being able to drill down to a period of interest pretty quickly just with the document property to auto filter all the visualizations.
Yeah,
I really love the use of the Kanban chart to do the year selector. I've never seen that before, and
it's very space efficient.
Very space efficient, yeah. And then
I was gonna say I didn't even pick it up on the first kind of visual you guys posted, and then when I went and actually explored this project, I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Like that one.
Yeah, the Sunburst is pretty space efficient for a drill down too, actually. Because you can't, it's hard to do sort of comparative inference on the size of the slices of the areas of the Sunburst, but you can quickly get the sense of what's to click on, and as a drill down mechanism.
And I like the fact that you can add labels, so you can it's hard to discern visually the area that each one of these components is taking up. The fact that you have a label helps.
Good point. Absolutely, good point. Yeah.
On the rest of the tabs, kind of kept with a visual theme for just being able to see clearly on the dark background. I added the lakes and streams as another map layer here. So this is all drill down, so I can click on certain areas and look at specific water usage by cooling type. You can see Mississippi River, Lake Michigan. I think Neil, you already pointed these out on the top uses. And then I changed the aggregation method because you can get some different results if you're looking at like mean usage versus total usage. And then also just being able to control this dynamically again with the doc property, so I can plug in top 5 and just look at top 5, or if I wanted to really kind of open it up, I can really look at a higher proportion of top end water usage sources.
It's one of your best practices that I really love that you do, is you really make use of that top, show or hide top values. If you didn't do that, there would have been tons of values, and people I see they'll use scroll bars often and zoom sliders often, which sometimes you want to see every value, but a lot of times you just want to see generally the trend that's happening. And I think the way you have these controls in there by showing top, the number of years on the first tab, and now the number of water sources on the second tab, I think that really helps the interpretability of the dashboard.
Yep.
Yeah,
and
the
then
speed to insight is that general principle that I think he's John's pushing there.
Exactly, much faster to get the insight.
Yeah, and then same thing with the trellis optionality. So if I wanted to break down the water sources by cooling type, being able to do that, and then as I highlight each one of these bars, you can kind of see the states that are pulling from that specific water source. So. So that was exercise 2. Exercise 3, I kind of broke with my visual theme because I went to drought.gov, which is, the NGO responsible for tracking drought data. And I actually just used the color tool to pick the colors that they use for drought specifications. So these are the same ones you see on drought.gov. In terms of visualization, I like these. This is just a scatter plot configured to tile by marker. And so this is kind of like a heat map that's trellised by each one of these drought conditions. And then it's, each on the y-axis, everything is just trellised out by year. And then we have months. So you can kind of see the gradation of severity for each one of these categories through time and kind of see when, obviously when, extreme drought started hitting in 2021 and which months it was the worst. And then visually just being able to trellis out the map and see kind of how this has changed through time for the given year. And you can pick and choose which year you want to really dive into and get an idea of drought conditions and where they were geospatially.
Yeah, I thought this one had some really cool, like different takes on how to do kind of a similar thing. Like the tiled scatter was pretty neat. It's really condensed.
And it's, I was struck by the color scheme, and it's fascinating. I didn't realize you got that from the NGO on drought. That's interesting.
It was convenient that it worked well with the dark theme I chose, but yeah, that's kind of where all this came from. So when trying to convey certain data that already has, potentially a color scheme associated with it, being able to use that same color scheme just helps with user understanding.
Yeah, for sure.
Same thing.
I really love the trellising, by the way. The way I had shown this solution as a time evolution, I had a slider that just went through each month, and you're able to kind of see here when you're able to jump through the years, you're able to see like the summer months better, the winter months better. Yeah, you're able to see the year at a glance. That time to insight's very fast, but you're still able to see like the seasonal changes as well. So excellent. And then the way you use the heat map at the right, just to show those drought conditions by areas, that was also good to show the overall the overall trend throughout all the years.
Yeah. Showing 2 time dimensions, I really like that. We were doing experiments with that during the COVID stuff, but picking a year and then seeing the months as a second drill down, I like the way that you can look at. I mean, we were doing some stuff with time of day and day, in terms of admissions in emergency rooms during COVID, and just to see 2 time dimensions at once, my mind likes that.
Mm-hmm.
But also, the 12 months lays out beautifully for trellis, right? You got
right. Any more than that, it gets a little convoluted.
Right.
And then, like Lee mentioned, exercise 4 was a bear. There was a lot to tie together with the points in polygon. I kept the same, drought color scheme here, and just being able to visualize where the plants are. Again, these are markable, so you can drill down into the severity of the drought and where these plants are, and you can see everything kind of populates. Again, the sunburst charts are great because you can use them to figure out not only the generation type, but then the water or the cooling mechanism as well. So you can kind of see what's, if it's complex or recirculating or once through. All those drill downs all kind of tie together. So. And then if, again, I added some filtering. So if I wanted to specifically choose, nuclear plants, I can see where they are, immediately see, because the color for the plants is the same as the drought severity they're in. Mm-hmm. So I can see, which nuke plants are in high drought conditions, and then what the cooling types are for those specific plants. Mm-hmm. And the nice thing about these is, I can pick and choose one, or I can choose a handful of these. So if I wanted to look at, a combination of nat gas, nuclear, et cetera, I can do that pretty easily.
Mm-hmm. You brought it together with the sunburst as well, to help drill down on those different types of cooling types down at the bottom. We really like that. And this exercise for those of you that are just kind of watching and did participate in the hackathon, this exercise required you to bring together 3 or 4 different data sets. And it's one thing to join your data sets with, column joins, which you're able to do on a couple of the data sets. But one of the data sets with Drought, bringing in with Drought, you don't have a columnar data set. You have a geospatial data set, and you have to do it points and polygons. And that was the trick there. You have to do a geospatial join that way,
Right.
to bring it together. So we kind of went through the individual power plant usage, power plant view, the water cooling view, the drought view, and then on exercise 4, bring it all together to start finding the least water efficient plants.
Right.
And then exercise 5, the data was fairly sparse, so I actually struggled pretty mightily with this exercise. Again, I used Kanban board as well, just to show categorical differences between each one of the renewable sources and kind of what the water usage is. But it was pretty sparse data set, so it was for me, it was difficult pulling out any of the insights out of it. And I did violate Michael's usage on units.
You can tell it's getting late in the competition, eh?
Yeah.
It's impressive that you guys were able to do this in just the
Just
6
to get
hours.
it all done, it was kind of
Yeah.
amazing. But yeah, this last exercise, apart from Lee messing up the units, I think I preferred his solution with this on this one. But no, it's like amazing work, you guys. It's incredible to get through all this, and yeah, it's a pretty good exercise too, Neil. The way you kind of set up the 3 data sources in the first 3 tabs, and then brought it together in the 4th tab. That was not nice.
Right. Well,
when you guys were working through it, how did that feel? I mean, you kind of had the 3 individual analyses, and then the analysis number 4. When you got to that, did you have all the other 3 in your head and kind of were able to then, bring it together? Or did you have to go back to the drawing board, or how did that feel getting into exercise 4?
I mean, it was nice that it kind of built up into this crescendo where you had kind of these piecemeal analyses, and then the exercise 4, asked you to kind of piece it all together. So that was nice because everything was still top of mind. And
that's what I was thinking. Yeah, you kind of had it in your head, right? So
so I knew where to go with the analysis.
Right.
Yeah, I think for me the toughest part was to kind of do it in the right sequence. For example, the points and polygon exercise, like doing it on the specific month that was kind of requested versus doing it on the whole time series, because I think then you have oftentimes issues with points and polygons where there's overlapping regions because there's time series polygons stacked on top of each other, so stuff like that. I think I ended up doing like a filtered table as kind of an extra table to work with, and then join that one in and things like that. So that was, I think, what tripped me up was kind of the sequence that had to happen to kind of combine all the data sets. That was the biggest thing to kind of figure out, and just not necessarily having the familiarity of the data sets and the keys between them, I think, is also a bit challenging.
Right. Yeah. If it was your own data at Birchcliff, you kind of know that going in, right? Whereas you kind of had to figure that stuff out with this new data you've seen before, right?
Yeah, normally like your domain knowledge kind of right, but in this case, we're kind of making that up as we go.
Right, gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, we sure enjoyed looking through these when we judged it, and I really enjoyed today getting the kind of behind the scenes view of where a lot of this stuff came from. That's really the color schemes and how you pull it together and everything. It's really awesome. I think we should probably try and find some time to write up like how you did this, not just what you did, because it's pretty instructive to me.
Well, and I did put a link into the LinkedIn chat that has a blog article, and within that blog article there are links to these dashboards. So if people want to try these dashboards out for themselves and explore them and see their interactivity, I think it's a great way to learn. throughout the blog article, there's a Spotfire dashboard link. So I'll put that link on the I'll put in the Facebook comment thread as well as the YouTube description as well, so people can find it there. Unfortunately, we have Ryan Hartquist and John Orth were unable to make it, but they have their dashboards in that blog article, so you can check it out and review it for yourself there.
Yeah, and I think let's spend some time on sort of distilling out best practices, Neil, and kind of adding it to our kind of growing literature on that, and see if we can maybe do a revisit on this, and put that out for people to consume.
Definitely, we want to share that good knowledge with the rest of the community. John really stands out to me when you use the show hide features and the top end, the top number of years, and then Lee, having those sidebars and having good hierarchical schemes with the Sunburst. So we'll put that all together.
Pulling down the page that Lee did, and the kind of scientific kind of nature of pretty much everything he touched was very impressive.
Yeah.
But yeah, two incredibly impressive pieces of work, guys. Amazing.
Yeah. Congrats again to both of you.
Thank you.
And hope to have you guys compete in our next year's hackathon. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, guys.
Thank you everyone for joining. Yeah.
Cheers, yeah.
Talk to you later.
Bye.